Cute dogs.
Yes.
Politics tonight, and ever since Hurricane Harvey came ashore, the coastal bend has been a point of interest for politicians trying to make a difference in the recovery process. Today, the Democrat running against George P. Bush for Texas Land Commissioner was touring Port Aransas. Miguel Suazo saying he wanted to get a first-hand look at what's being done nearly a year after that hurricane.
Miguel Suazo says he takes to heart the responsibilities of the Texas General Land Office, one of those being serving Texas citizens and their environment. By visiting Port Aransas, Suazo says he can see the damage firsthand and what can be done to prevent it.
The Texas General Land Office actually has programs and administers programs to help people recover from and prepare against the next storms that are here.
Earlier this month, current Texas Land Commissioner George P. Bush visited Rockport and surrounding areas too. He was checking on Harvey recovery efforts.
The state of Texas will remain committed and we'll see this through to the end.
Bush says although recovery is going slowly, the state is working to get things done. He mentions the $13 million funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the state that is going towards rebuilding efforts.
We're excited about the progress in completing the FEMA mission now and the HUD mission.
Suazo, Bush's opponent, says progress needs to be made towards hurricane preparation.
We need to make sure all of our leaders are on the same page. We need to make sure there's an executable plan. We need to do dry runs on how we respond to these things and make sure that people are not waiting days, weeks, and months, and here going on a year.
Both candidates do agree that the communities hit hardest along the coastal bend can't be forgotten. Marissa Cummings, 3 News.